It's insane.
Yeah.
We were told there would be no. Well, there's two things that are insane. One is the targeting of migrant workers, not cartel members, not gang members, not drug dealers, just construction workers showing up in construction sites and raiding them. Gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, really?
You might hear that and think, oh, okay, good for Joe Rogan. But one progressive, political, engaged celebrity isn't buying it. While drawing praise from some, Joe Rogan's criticism of the Trump administration is triggering eye rolls from others. In response to an account sharing that video, Mark Ruffalo posted, "Dear Joe Rogan, it's a little late now to pretend like Project 2025 didn't exist and wasn't the playbook all along. You are either not that smart or not that dumb. It's hard to tell at this point." And while Project 2025 didn't explicitly call for rounding up day laborers and construction workers, it did call for expedited removals, which many warned would violate due process, and called for the canceling of many different legal statuses to make lawful residents eligible for deportation. From there, many argue that this was the inevitable result. Calling for an increased level of deportations would result in things like this. But Cenk, what do you make of Ruffalo's response here? Is this right? Is this the right tone? How should he respond to somebody like Rogan criticizing the Trump administration?
Well, we're gonna ask you guys, but I'm gonna taint the jury pool here by telling you my opinion in a second. Although it doesn't usually move the poll much. You guys have a strong independent voice, which I love. So we're asking you two different polls. One's in the live chat on YouTube as we do the show live 6 to 8 p.m. As we do every day, Monday through Friday. Anyways, when Rogan turns against Trump's immigration policy, we should A, commend him for turning around, B, criticize him for getting it wrong, C, neither. And then on our website, this is why I'm really interested in tyt.com. When Joe Rogan turns on Trump on any given issue, it's A, okay, by the way, let's look at, on the live chat, great, okay, good. Over, what is that, 63% or so? 62, 63% saying commend him for turning around. Anyways, on the website, what should we do? A, great that he's telling his audience Trump is wrong. B, useless, we already had the election. C, not going to affect anything because he'll go back to supporting MAGA in the next election. So curious what you guys think about that on tyt.com. Okay, so what do I think? I like Mark Ruffalo a lot. I think he's one of the best celebrities. He uses his name recognition for good 98% of the time. I mean, as far as I can tell, really 100% of the time. And he's one of the most progressive, one of the most down to earth, cares about the average American, average human being. That's all the lead up to me saying I totally disagree. So what are we yelling at the guy for? He's coming to our side. Well, how does that help? So, all right, Jordan, back to you.
No, I'm kind of in alignment with you on this, and it feels weird because, like you're saying, Ruffalo, I'm just in agreement with almost 100% of the time, and this, I think, probably not the best time to take a shot at Rogan. I think his audience is massive. We acknowledge that it is largely influential, and or his show is influential, and he's saying something that maybe they won't hear anywhere else. That said, I understand why people would criticize him in the first place. And for such a large and influential program, he very rarely does preliminary or prep research. And that's where you see conspiracy theorists, misinformation peddlers, or outright bigots come on the show and start to sow seeds of bigotry, hate, xenophobia, whatever. As I'd say independent or even progressive watchdog organizations have pointed out over the years, that show has been a breeding ground for a lot of things that have negative societal impacts. And people are often free to say whatever they want unchecked. And for somebody in his role, I would argue there's a responsibility to at least read up on what you're going to talk about. So as he endorsed Trump in the run up to the 2024 election, I think when you have a show that big, you can't just chalk it up to like, oh, I'm just having conversations. I'm just listening. No, you're like the biggest show on the planet. Like it doesn't really work that way. Like you have a responsibility to think through what you're going to say, who you're going to endorse, the impact of that. But then I go back to that said, look, he's criticizing Trump. Very few people are doing that. Very few people are breaking with Trump on these types of things. And the ones that do are being met with criticism from within their own ranks. So it is interesting to see who's willing to speak out and who isn't. I'm, slightly gonna diverge from Mark Ruffalo just on this one issue. What do you think?
Yeah, and look, it's having an effect. Of course, business interests are having a larger effect. But Donald Trump in his speech the other day, we're gonna cover it on a different story later in the show, talked about how, we might have to make an exception for farm workers and hotel and leisure industry, because a lot of people are complaining that we're just taking people from their jobs and stuff. So that's largely those industries that are greasing him up, etc. But there's a little bit of him sensing the independent podcasters and broadcasters like Rogan are beginning to leave the building, right? A lot of them are saying the same thing, which is where the American people are, which is, hey, you wanna round up undocumented criminals? No problem. You wanna close the border? No problem. In fact, good, okay? But you start rounding up regular people who've been here 10, 15 years who are going to their job, it's cruel and we don't like it, we don't want it. So they're reconsidering it. Now, of course, that's led to a different MAGA rebellion against that idea to Trump. But look at this, Charlie Kirk and the right wingers are saying, no, arrest them wherever they are. But Rogan and the independent podcasters are saying, no, don't do that, don't do that. So we have a significant schism, not just from Trump, but from Trump in two different directions and against one another. So A, that diversity of thought is great. B, the fact that the Rogans agree with us instead of the Charlie Kirks and the Donald Trumps is fantastic. And so, Jordan, do I agree with you that, I wish that Rogan had, challenged Trump more, done more homework on it, of course, right? But let's also be fair and recognize that the Democrats didn't even try to win their votes. Kamala Harris wouldn't go on any of those shows. And the Democrats are like, no, we will go on mainstream media. We are the establishment. We have 90 corporate CEOs on our side, right? Well, who do we think they were gonna back? Were they really gonna back a corporate politician? It's incumbent upon us to pick great populist candidates where the Rogans and Dylans of the world would go, okay, hell yeah, let's do that, right? And they don't have to be right wing. They could be populist left, but they can't be corporate stooges and robots and then go, I can't believe you supported the other guy. You should have supported our corporate robot instead. It's too much to ask for. So when he comes to us, take the win, for God's sake, take the win.
Yeah, I think there was one other thing that I just saw this week. So that Instagram or social media show that some people may be familiar with, Subway Takes, the host apparently said that they recorded an episode with Kamala Harris and it was so wonky and so confusing and uncomfortable that there was a mutual agreement between her team and his that they would just never air the episode. And I think that's ultimately why she didn't do those types of shows. She really wasn't good at that type of stuff. She can deliver talking points, she can stay on script, but the strength of Rogan's show, and that's where you saw Trump and Vance and others shine, it's fluid. They're free flowing. That Trump episode is really interesting in that regard. Of course, not his content, but he talks about UFC and boxing for like the first 30 minutes. And it makes him seem relatable. It makes him seem like a normal guy. Kamala Harris could not do that. And of course, there are marked differences between what she ran on. And while, of course, I don't agree with it 100%, would argue it was somewhat better than Trump's platform, but she couldn't be relatable in those moments. And I think that's really what it was. It wasn't that they didn't want to win those people over or try. It's that she wasn't able. And that gets into the strength of the candidate. And I would argue having better policies will also help in that regard. So I'm with you on that front.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.